What does it take to leave your own country and move somewhere else, successfully start a new life, and build something really, really meaningful? Not just visit, not just for a few months. Because moving to a new place really feels exciting. It feels like freedom, like you're about to start a complete new chapter in your life. But what no one actually prepares you for is what it takes to stay there. Before we go deeper, I want to be honest with you. This video is based on my research, conversations, and understanding how the system works. Not because I've lived in all these countries. This is a video I wish I had watched before I had made my own move. When I first landed in Kenya, I came with that energy, vision, that belief that things will just figure themselves out as I move along.
Man, guys, I don't know what to expect in this Kenya, but I know it's going to be lit. Yeah, right here.
And in some ways, they did. But not without challenges I didn't see coming. Things like permits, visa renewal, how the system actually works, not how you think they work. And that's when it hits me. A lot of us plan to move, but we don't plan to stay. So this is not me telling you where to go, but this is me giving you something to think about before you take that step. When you start to look at Africa, there are places where staying doesn't legally cost that much, at least on paper. Let's take Uganda for example. You might need about 100 to say 150 US dollars a year for a certain permit. And at first, that sounds like a perfect deal. But then you realize staying here isn't just about paying. It's about why you're there, what you're doing, and how that fits into the system. I came across stories of people who moved thinking they will figure out things in a few months, and 2 years later, they're still trying to stabilize their residency situation. Not because they were doing something illegal, but because they underestimated how much planning long-term relocation actually takes. If your situation changes, your permit changes with it. You don't just arrive and settle. You stay alert, you renew, you ask questions, you adjust, and then there is Tanzania. Beautiful, calm, almost effortless when you first experience it. And yes, the cost can sit somewhere around $100 to $200. But staying long time here is structure. You need a clear reason. Work, business, something really defined. I remember reading about someone who moved after visiting Zanzibar on vacation. They fell in love with the lifestyle, the beaches, the slower pace of life. But vacation life and residency life are entirely two different things. Once the saving starts going down, the paperwork starts becoming real, the experience changed completely. You can fall in love with the place easily, but staying requires more than just that. The next place, Ghana. It feels different. There's a sense of connection, especially for people from the diaspora. Ghana is one of the countries that emotionally pulls a lot of people in, especially African Americans, looking for connections. Arriving there and saying for the first time, they felt seen differently. But emotional connections alone still doesn't remove paperwork, budget, and long-term planning. Remember the year of return, where many African Americans and diasporans returned back to Ghana and even got residency. It feels like home in a way that's hard to explain. And even though the cost of residency can be relatively low, around 100 to 150 USD range, you start to understand that time becomes part of the purpose. You apply, you wait, you follow up, and you wait again. You are welcomed, but you still have to move through the system. Sometimes you look at Rwanda. Everything feels more organized, more structured. The system is smoother, it's clearer, more predictable, and the costs can even be lower, sometimes as low as 50 USD. But then life itself reminds you, Kigali is not cheap as people expect it. Rent, lifestyle, it adds up. So yes, it's easier to enter. I've noticed a lot of digital nomads, remote workers, becoming interested in Rwanda because of how organized everything feels. The structure can also humble you quickly if your income is unstable. You can't rely on vibes in Kigali. Bills will remind you very fast. It's easier to enter, but staying comfortably depends on what you're building. Then you move into countries where it's not just about entry. It's about building. And this is where Kenya sits. Somewhere in the middle. You might pay anywhere from 200 to over 1,000 US dollars, depending on your permit. But what keeps people here is not the price, it's the access, the energy, the movement, the sense that something is happening. But Kenya would also test you. Things don't always move when you expect them to move. Permits can delay, and life in the city like Nairobi can become expensive. It's not perfect, but it's possible. And honestly, Kenya has taught me personally that there is a big difference between surviving somewhere and building a life there. Adrenaline carries you. Everything feels exciting. Eventually, real life starts to ask questions. How stable are you? What's your long-term plan? How will you sustain yourself? And those are the questions many people avoid before relocating. Then there's Nigeria. The cost of residency can sit around $300 to over $1,000, depending on what you're doing. But the real story is not the cost, it's the scale. This is one of the biggest markets in the continent, my own country. If something works here, it can grow fast, but it is not a soft landing. You need to understand how things work. You need people. You need to know how to move. You need to be patient. Nigeria is powerful, but demands a lot from you. I've seen people arrive Nigeria alone, thinking the market alone guarantees success. Over 200 million people. But Nigeria rewards people who understands movement, relationship, timing. The government of the day versus the next government can be entirely two different things. Electricity, inadequate security can overwhelm you, but it can actually also make you feel unstoppable the other moment. That country will stretch your thinking quickly. In places like Zambia, things feel a bit quieter, less crowded, less competition, more of space, and that can be a good thing. But it also means growth is slower. Opportunities don't always show themselves immediately. And sometimes the quietness is exactly what certain people are looking for. Not everybody wants chaos of massive cities. Some people just want space to breathe, build slowly and live differently. Namibia feels calm, structured, almost still, but with calm comes waiting. Fewer opportunities, a slower pace of life, though the population is not too much also. Majority just desert in fields, but slower can also become lonely if only you're not mentally prepared for it. And that's another thing people don't really think about enough when trying to relocate. The emotional side of starting over and a slower pace of life. Botswana. It's not just about paying to stay. It's about whether you qualify. You can have the money and still not get in. And honestly, that surprises many people. Because relocating, most times people think about its finance. Once you have the money, you can get access. Or you're leaving because you want to go and make money over there. But some countries are also asking, what are the values you're bringing? How do you fit into our system? Looking at countries where the cost goes higher and the system becomes more structured, like in South Africa, you are looking at anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 or more. But it's not just about the money, it's the paperwork, processes, waiting, and also understanding the environment that you're stepping into. There have been moments of tension, especially around jobs and economic pressure. But that's not the full picture. Many people live, work, and build successful businesses here. You just have to be aware and move with understanding. I've watched interviews and stories of people building successful businesses and have built successful life over there. And at the same time, people are experiencing fear of social tension. And I'm sure you've seen stories of people being scared about the social tensions. And I think that's very important to understand. No country is one thing. People's experiences can be completely different, depending on where they are, who they are, and how they move. Let's talk about Mauritius. It's different. It's either you're paying higher money or you're investing millions, or investing serious money, in quotes, millions of dollars. Sometimes to get residency costs between tens of thousands of dollars, but everything is clear. This is long-term positioning, kind of place where people move when they have already had stability somewhere else. They are already successful, not where people go to start from scratch. This is structures. There is planning because the system works here. There's also Seychelles. Looks like a dream, but living there is expensive. Across everything, that's the real challenge. Because sometimes paradise often looks affordable until you try to live there every single day. And in Morocco, you're not just moving, you're adapting. The language, the system, the culture, everything asks something from you. And adaptation is something most people underestimate. The food, the language, culture, even how people communicate. Then there's the new Africa, Burkina Faso. These are places where the conversation changes. Because like Burkina Faso, You might have seen it online. The idea of a new Africa. A call for Africans and diasporans to come back, to build, to invest, and it sounds powerful. And in many ways, it is. But moving based on an idea alone, without understanding the full reality on ground, that's where people get it wrong. Because beyond the message, there are real challenges. This is about being prepared. I think sometimes social media can romanticize the idea of relocation, especially when political movements and emotional messages are involved. But moving countries is still a real life. You still need income, stability, safety, and a long-term plan. Security or insecurity, systems, infrastructures, and what if there is a change of government? So it's not just about being called, it's just about being prepared. When you step back and look at everything, you start to understand. The cost of living in Africa is not just about money. It's about patience, awareness, and clarity. Every country will give you something, but every country will also ask something from you. So if you're ever thinking of starting a new life in a new place, ask yourself this question and start on the right foot. Because many people take that step and never find their way back. I've been away from this channel for about 2 months, trying to figure out my life in this channel. But I'm glad to say I'm back, and this time with content that really adds value. If this is your first time on this channel, welcome to Thrybe. If you love real conversations like this, subscribe. And if you have been here before, thank you for staying, even when I was not active. We're back, and there's a lot more coming. My name is Harry, and this is Thrybe. I'll see you on the next one.